Hello everyone, and today I'm taking a look at something pretty exciting. The first of Samyang's premium range of lenses, their new XP 85mm f1.2 for full frame or APS-C digital SLR cameras, or mirrorless cameras with an adapter. Samyang are clearly quite confident with the quality of this new lens, as it comes in at a premium price of £900. Still though, a lot less than Canon's equivalent L lens, which costs £1.5 even if it has autofocus. When you look at the sheer amount of beautiful, high quality glass needed to manufacture an 85mm f1.2 lens, the price begins to make sense. Such a lens is born for portrait photography, where an aperture of f1.2 can beautifully throw out your backgrounds, even when stood away from your subject. This is the kind of lens that professionals use to distinguish their work from the competition's. And the amount of light that f1.2 will get to your camera's sensor is also extremely useful for handheld work, shooting indoors, or even doing video work. It lets in about 30% more light than an f1.4 lens. And on a full frame camera, the 85mm focal length is still really useful for general use, like landscape photography. On an APS-C camera, it's the full frame equivalent of 136mm, so that's a much tighter angle, but still extremely useful for portrait images. Unsurprisingly, for such a fast aperture lens, it does not feature image stabilization. Let's have a look at the build quality then. Samyang's engineers must have had a field day designing a premium lens. As you can see, it's very big, being packed with very large glass elements. The body of the lens is made of metal, weighing just over a kilogram and with a large 86mm filter thread. It's based on a metal lens mount with electronic contacts for aperture control by the camera, focus confirmation through the viewfinder, and EXIF information. Nice. Although there is no extra weather sealing gasket on the mount. This is a manual focus lens, but it's the kind that might just make you fall in love with manual focus lenses, because the rubberized focus ring runs so smoothly and precisely that it's a real pleasure to handle. I just focused using live view mode on the camera and I had no problems with the precision of the focus ring. The lens comes with a somewhat shallow hood, which could be deeper, but at least it looks nice. Overall, it's a joy to handle such a well-built piece of equipment. Just holding the lens in your hands makes you want to get out and shoot. And it's nice to have a camera-controlled aperture on a Samyang lens too. Now let's see how it performs optically. We'll start on a full-frame camera, my 20MP Canon 6D. Now, in the past, occasionally people have claimed that I'm biased towards Samyang lenses, so for a change, I'm going to show you these test pictures without any comment so that you can make up your own mind. Here's the middle of the image at f1.2, and here are the corners at f1.2. The only thing I will say is that this lens is even sharper than Canon's latest 85mm f1.2 L lens. And that's really saying something. The Samyang lens remains this sharp even down to f11 and beyond. Really impressive. And now let's see how the lens conducts itself on an APS-C camera, my 24MP Canon EOS M3. In the middle, at f1.2, we continue to see fantastic sharpness, although a little purple fringing is elbowing its way in there. The corners of the image are reasonably sharp. Stop down to f2 and they're a touch better, and back in the middle, that purple fringing is gone. At f2.8, sharpness is perfect in the middle and very good in the corners, getting really excellent when you stop down further, down to f8. And at f11, diffraction is starting to kick in and we see a very slight drop in sharpness. Overall, the Samyang 85mm 1.2 is a very sharp lens on APS-C and completely flawless on full frame. Well, let's see about vignetting and distortion on a full frame sensor. The lens is essentially distortion free, which is good, but at f1.2, unsurprisingly, we see darkness in the corners. Stop down to f2 to push that darkness into the edges, and at f2.8, vignetting is negligible. a fairly good show. The lens can focus as closely as 80 cm, not bad for a portrait lens. Even at f1.2, at close distances, sharpness remains excellent. And let's see about flaring. As you might expect, this lens, with its huge glass elements, doesn't really like to work against bright lights. The flaring pattern is soft, which is nice, but you lose a lot of contrast, so use the lens hood supplied if you're shooting on a sunny day. And finally, bokeh. This lens will throw your backgrounds wildly out of focus, but do they look pleasant enough? To my mind, the answer is definitely yes. Even difficult backgrounds or areas in the middle distance are rendered very smoothly indeed. The bokeh looks very nice. The only issue I can see is that, at f1.2, bright points of light tend to have their circular shape cut off due to physical vignetting. That's a pretty common issue though for such a fast lens. I much prefer the bokeh on this Samyang lens to Canon's lenses though, which tend to show some busyness and colourful highlighting. Overall, there's not much more I can say, except that after today, I need to update my list of sharpest camera lenses I've ever tested. The Samyang XP 85mm f1.2 is simply a stellar optic, one of the sharpest I've tested, and one of the most enjoyable manual focus lenses I have handled. One might compare it to Canon's 85mm f1.2 EOS M3 Mark II lens, but as you can see on this chart I've prepared, the Canon lens, in itself an excellent optic, is rather left by the wayside in my opinion. I had my review sample of this lens for 2 weeks over Christmas. Unfortunately, I had to give it back. One of the best portrait lenses money can buy. Highly recommended.